Table 2, we can 3-bet or call. This time we will 3-bet. And table 1, this is a little bit awkward. We will continue some overcards, but even with the diamond, this time we're going to fold. And queen 10 suited, a little bit tight, but facing the snap 4-bet, I'm going to fold this hand. Queen 9 offsuit will be the bottom of the open range here. Facing the 3-bet to 12 big blinds. As a simplification, it's okay just to pure fold Jack 8 suited here. The hand could low frequency call or maybe even 4-bet, but we're just going to fold. Facing the flat from the short stack on table 1, we're going to assume that this is a recreational player. And facing the small 3-bet from the big blind, we don't really want to get 4-bet off of our hand, so we're going to call, but very much liking our hand at this point. And obviously just going broke in this spot. I suspect that player 2 has very little ace-x. That being said, player 1 could absolutely still have some ace-x that will go broke. We're going to go a large size here because we're really repping only good ace-x plus. Normally we would size down on a ace-high board like this. Or sorry, not so much about the ace-x board. That's sort of true as well, but more so the fact that this is multi-way. So we're going to continue to bet here. And just setting up for a more or less geometric sizing. It's possible that our opponent has ace-king, but all the money is supposed to go in here. This is the best hand we can basically have, except for, I don't know, quads. And, you know, for bluffs, we would probably have some backdoor diamonds that are ready to dust it off. And we do win. Our opponent had pocket kings for the absolute punt. And with 6 big blinds here, pretty sure we have to call, but not super experienced at this exactly. Table 2, having the spade is actually quite nice because it will block some of our opponent's bluffs on the turn when a spade rolls off. And our hand has showdown value at this point, so it makes less sense to try to get our opponent to fold when our hand is this good. On the turn, would be reasonable to place a bet, especially if we're splitting sizes, but this time we will check. And we will lose a lot here, but also pretty easy for our opponent to just have any 2 cards that decide that they want to try to win. As they did in this case. King high, a little too high up in the range, I think, for them to bluff with. At least it should be mixing. Table 1, lots of things possible on this board. Could check raise, but I think the hand is going to preserve a little bit better equity by overbetting because I expect players to check back some 8x, 9x and call pure versus the overbet. Whereas I expect them to bet 2 pair plus pure. And on a board this good for us, perfectly reasonable to simplify to range betting. This allows us to bet hands like King Queen at full frequency. I also don't suspect that opponents will check raise enough, on a board this scary, even though they have Queen 10 offsuit pure. And table 1, very defensive on a board that's terrible for us. Table 2, our hand can get in here for an overbet at some frequency. I think on the two-tone turn, it's quite tempting for our opponent to call with lots of different flush draws and combo draws. And getting a little thin here on the river, partly a question of whether or not our opponent is going to turn enough 10x into bluffs. I think they are not, so very thin, but thin is good when players are going to underbluff and not exploit how thin you're going. King Jack, Jack 8, Jack 9, Ace X, combo draws. And because we are deeper here on table 1, we're going to just call this bet. Little small, and as far as 4 bets go for him. And this hand could call on table 1. It also makes a pretty logical check raise candidate. He does go quite large. So perhaps shove makes the most sense. A little tough with things not in big blinds for me to make sense of stuff. I'm trying to get called by like ace king with the ace of spades here. Hands like that. But when he bets 30 big blinds flop, it's yeah, a little bit tough to check raise, leaving less than half pot shove on turn. Could have gone for it, or could have check raised a bit smaller, like 150 or something. And once again, I think easy enough to simplify to a range bet here, just given how much better King X we have and how many pocket pairs, like, all of the pairs really, that can bet for value. Turn, our hand could continue to bet. However, we have some showdown against some ace X, so I would prefer to bet with gut shots that are a little bit weaker. Not folding just yet with kind of the nut bluff catcher. And on this river, I do actually think block makes some sense. Our range contains way more ace high than his does. And I suspect that hands like Queen Jack of clubs that do not 3-bet, or Jack 8 of clubs, for example, are going to be in the betting range on turn. And very nitty call by him. Actually saved ourselves some money if he's just going to call with trips there. Facing the min raise, we can't really fold anything. The odds that we're getting are just so much better compared to if he had bet $6. We could 3-bet sometimes, but this time we will call. Table 2, bet and check are both reasonable options. Going to have gutties is kind of the bottom of the range. Very picky about our candidates this many ways, 4 ways. Facing a large bet from button, you want to ask how thin button would go for value here. Probably something like King Jack plus. And facing the raise from small blind. We have an easy fold at this point. And it would be reasonable to 3-bet this hand at some frequency, but facing 2.5x open from the small blind, we're just going to call. Table 2 could simplify to range betting here, but I'm not going to. Table 1, our hand does make some sense as a raise, actually. Blocking now flush draws with the backdoor straight draw. We will go for it this time. And we do get it through. Ranges are very wide, blind v blind, so it's pretty easy for players to overdo it with their air. A lot of like bluffing the bluff dynamics emerge, blind v blind. And because this player is a little shallower, we'll size down 1 pip on table 2. So definitely wanting to bet now, get called by some ace-x, and build a pot while we can with a hand that's not going to be able to bet much in later streets. Hands like 10s and jacks could exist in our opponent's range, full frequency or partial. Depends on what kind of fish it is, and know what to know. Table 1, exploitatively flatting versus the limp is fine. And facing the snap check on the river here, I don't really expect my opponent to have 10s or jacks very often, so I think we can bet with impunity. Probably got called by 6s. Maybe shove was better. Yeah, 6s exactly. That was a brain fart fold by me. I should have considered calling with the pair. Just thinking about the previous hand a little too much. Tough to make these videos with no time bank while talking. And important always to be aware of whether our opponent is a fish or a reg. If our opponent is short stacked, they are most likely a fish, about 10 to 1 odds that they are. That being said, there's ignition, weird, like have to reload between hand problems, but this will change your strategy in a lot of fundamental ways. You know, how wide your opponent is going to the flop really alters the strategy. The elasticity of your opponent's alters strategy, so really everything is different once you identify that your opponent is a fish. Jack 9 offsuit bottom-ish of calling range, close to bottom, button versus big blind 100 deep, 25 big blinds deep. This might even be a fold, but when we factor into this consideration that our opponent's clearly a recreational, I think our post-flop edge goes up enough that we can call. And so, you know, what I was saying about who we're up against mattering a lot, it's coming into consideration right here and right now. A lot of players would just fold this hand with jack high, no front door draw, but we're going to have opportunities at later nodes available to us, and such a node is this one. And this is what I mean, right? You, when players bet with too many hands, too weak a range, you know, you're able to bluff them on later streets. And table 1, this may be a check in theory, but actually it's tough to get here with floats much worse than this hand. So I think we are going to bet. And table 2, check raise and call are both reasonable. I think with the pair, we're just winning in every possible capacity, except for, you know, against like strong queen X. And now on this river, our opponent cannot have the king of hearts. I think block maybe makes the most sense. Representing like a king, basically, or maybe like 2 pair. And facing the raise, not quite sure what's best exploitatively here. Really, really difficult to get paid. Like I'd bet a 5 to 1 we're not getting called here, but we will raise and try because we have the nuts. Actually, we don't have the nuts. Jack 10 of hearts is the nuts, so that would have been funny. And simplifying to a range bet here in an unnamed pool is fine. I'm gonna have a more complex strategy when playing against people every day, but here I think we can just range bet. And similarly on table 1. Now, our hand has really diminished in showdown value once called. That being said, there could be some weaker 10x that we are ahead of still. So I'm gonna try our best to show down here. And very, very tight, but I think fold might be best. I'm not really imagining players getting here with much like king 3 of clubs, hands like that. So we're just gonna make a really nitty fold. Same on table 1. In general, you know, if the spot seems really close and you think the pool is under bluffing, then fold can never be that bad. Of course, if you play higher stakes, you should not be too biased towards one option or the other if you're unsure. And important to recognize who this board is better for. Even though our opponent checked, they should have lots and lots of checks that contain strong hands. The board is much better for him. By checking, we preserve the equity of like our backdoor flush draw when a heart rolls off a little bit more. We're just kind of in a better spot the more passive this hand is. In other words, this hand can be a value bet at some point if the line is passive enough, but it's only going to be a bluff catcher once lots of money starts piling in. So for example, on this river, really comfortable value bet. Trying to think about sizing a bit. Keep it simple. Getting called by a weaker 10x, 3x as well, and maybe even some ace high. Whereas had we just bet 2 streets, this would not have been possible. And sure enough, we did get called by ace high. And table 1, betting small or check would both be fine. Almost feasible to turn this hand into a bluff, but probably just a little too much showdown value, in my opinion, for these games. So yeah, we're just gonna check call flop. Half pot, kind of a fishy sizing. I mean, obviously it's fine, but yeah. Could conceivably play some leads on this turn, but not strictly necessary. And our opponent should have lots of queen x. They could also river some jack x and value bet, but yeah. facing the raise here. Really quite strange. I guess trips. But we have all of the boats, so it really is our board. Could lead on this turn. Obviously losing to King Jack, but yeah, just the money's going in, I think. And it seems like our opponent has a king, and it's pretty tough to fold three of a kind, so we are going to bet. And honestly, if our opponent rips it in at these stakes, we have an easy fold. No one is bluffing here with the king or jack. And we win yet again. This time our opponent had trips, king 3. And sevens has done its job now, betting a small size to deny equity from hands like, I don't know, Jack 8 of spades, and now just in showdown mode. This bet will be floats from our opponent like king queen, queen jack, maybe some thin value bets, as thin as 9x, but most likely 10x. I think we have a pretty good spot to check turn or call turn fold river. A7 suited could 3-bet or fold. We'll fold this time. Just facing 3x specifically. And we'll start wrapping up the video here. Nines could call at some frequency, but on an unnamed pool like this, just going to 3-bet the hand. Going to play more calls facing a smaller open and less calls facing a larger open, so min open, more tempting to call nines. And table 1 can play big bet, can play small bet, can play check. I don't think the recreational player is going to check raise us enough to compensate us for betting small. So starting large could overbet, except with the shallower stack, no real need to do that to get stacks in by the river. And yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks, guys.